What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are continuing on our scenario reviews for Blood Red Skies, and today we have scenario 6 for you. So this is High Altitude Intercept. So another fun one here that really pushes some of the boundaries of the game here, and just allows for some really exciting missions or not, I shouldn't say missions, but more exciting interactions in the mission, and just things that aren't just, again, basic engagements, dogfight, and just wipe the other player out. So again, this really does force you to have multiple moving pieces here and things that just again overall make it I think more enjoyable for both players here. So interceptors and escorts again. So the player with the largest number of planes in their force is considered to be the intercepting player. If points or numbers of planes are equal on each for each player, then you roll a dice for initiative. Low roller is the interceptor and has the option to use numbers and or home advantage theater card as their theater card choices, which is pretty bonkers. But again, certainly a way to ratchet up the challenge level between the two players there. So escorting player elements has an option here. So the escorting player deploys in one or more elements. An equal number of aircraft are assigned to each element, and each element must comprise entirely planes from the same squadron. The escorting player is assigned one extra element of bombers here per two elements of escorts deployed, rounding up. So bomber elements may comprise, as we've seen in one of the recent scenarios that we reviewed, so up to 6 single-engine bombers, or up to 3 twin-engine or tri-engines, or up to 2 4-engine bombers. And each bomber element forms a squadron in itself. Use markers for bombers if no models are available, which is going to be, especially for the bigger planes, really what you're going to have to do, since there really aren't any to scale yet, unless you've gotten a little bit creative and have access to like a 3D printer or anything, and have kind of gone ahead and made models for the game that Warlord hasn't made yet. So the intercepting player element here. So the intercepting player initially deploys using high cover markers only and starts with 2 high cover markers for each escorting element, and more may arrive later, which is pretty cool. The excess number of high cover markers allow the intercepting player to use some as decoys before committing their aircraft. So then from there, deployment sequence here. So we have the bomber elements coming in here. So the escorting player begins by selecting one edge of the table and deploying their bomber elements within 6. And then the bomber elements must be deployed at least 9 inches from the table sides, though, so a little bit more towards the center. Then escorting player elements are deployed anywhere within 18 of the same table edge. The escorting element consists entirely of planes with the deep pockets trait or multi-engine fighters. The element may be deployed anywhere on the table. Escorting elements may not deploy within 6 of another escorting element. So, giving you some flexibility there. So depending on, again, the two sides playing and what part of the war and what planes are available. So if you do have nothing but deep pockets fighters, then that gives you some greater ability to deploy and potentially counter what the intercepting player is going to be doing. And speaking of which here, so once the bombers and escorting forces are deployed, the intercepting player deploys his high cover markers as desired along any of the 3 table edges not selected by the escorting player. So multiple things going on there, but again, really just makes for some interesting choices essentially before the game even really gets going here. So figuring out as the intercepting player maybe the best way to try and box in the escorting player is going to be one of the keys there. And again, depending on what planes you bring, that could be more or less difficult, just depending on what all is involved there. Moving on, starting advantage level. So all bombers begin advantage, which is pretty cool, unlike one of the earlier scenarios that we looked at. Roll a d6 for each escorting plane, and as normal, 1 to 2 is disadvantaged, 3 to 4 is neutral, and 5 to 6 advantaged. So, and then the bombers all begin the scenario laden. We've seen that before, but squadron morale rules apply to the bombers. So accumulated boom chits can still scatter the squadrons. So this means ditching ordnance from threatened bombers can be a smart move if it can prevent destruction. So worthwhile to look into there. Then interceptor high cover markers. So at high altitudes, the interceptors could rarely swoop down from a high perch and often found themselves clawing for every ounce of climb they could muster. So interceptor high cover markers in this scenario follow all the normal rules for high cover markers with the following exceptions. When a high cover marker is committed to the attack by moving onto the table, it's replaced by an element of intercepting aircraft. Each intercepting element must comprise between 2 and 4 planes from the same squadron. So, intercepting aircraft may move on the table within 18 inches of an escorting aircraft and must roll for their starting advantage. So again, as is normal, the breakdown there on the D6, and if no escorts are within 18 of the intercepting aircraft, then you can enter with advantage, which again could be another factor there. And worthwhile to try and maybe make that happen. However, depending on what all is involved with the escorting player, if they manage to spread out a little bit, they could certainly try to prevent you from being able to achieve that, and then you still have to roll normal. Now, of course, if you manage to still get advantage after that, great for you, and that could maybe lead to some of the escorting players getting out of position if they do try to prevent you from achieving that. The escort's fuel. So basically, the escorts will have to burn considerably more fuel staying with the bombers until contact. All escorting squadrons start with one boom chit already applied to them, which is pretty rough, but again, does need to balance some things out here. Then close to the Angel. So traveling at high altitude was one of the bomber's best defenses as the thin air limited aircraft performance. So any aircraft that attempts a climb for advantage pilot action must pass a maneuver test to succeed there. So a great climb trait card can be played by aircraft with the appropriate trait attempting to climb for advantage. If this is done, the aircraft passes automatically. So something to keep in mind too. So both on the escorting player side and the intercepting player side, taking something with great climb certainly will pay dividends in this scenario. And then finally here, the unfriendly skies. So the intercepting player rolls a d6 at the start of each turn after the first. 5 through 6, place 2 additional high cover markers on the table edge of your choice. 3 to 4, just place 1. And then finally 1 to 2, no additional high cover markers this turn. And then if no intercepting aircraft are currently in the play area, the intercepting player can elect to place a flak barrage, which is pretty cool too. Instead of rolling for additional high cover markers, the flak barrage has a firepower value equal to the roll of a d6 and remains in play until interceptors next move onto the table when it's immediately removed. So another neat way of dealing with the bombers here, just really thematic too. So the bombers, the escorts trying to get away from interceptors, possibly going through flak barrages, and then maybe dealing with interceptors again on the way back from their bomb runs. So really neat stuff here. Then leaving the battle area, so bombers that exit the table leave the scenario altogether. No boom chits inflicted for the planes lost this way. And then if an escort or interceptor leaves, it re-enters on the following turn if it does pass a maneuver test. Redeploy and redeploy the returning plane anywhere along the edge it left from, and again, you're going to roll for its starting advantage level. If the maneuver test is failed, then basically the plane decides to just bug out and go home, and then that does create a boom chit there. So how does the game? How long does the game last here? And the victory, how's that calculated? So 6 turns here, or until all one side squadrons are driven off by boom chits, whichever comes first. And if things go horribly wrong, that could be rather soon too. So victory, each bomber is worth the following. So single is 1, twin or tri is 2, and 4 engine is 4 there. And here as well, if the bomber survives the scenario still laden with bombs, the VPs are awarded to the escorting player instead, so kudos to you if you can manage that. If the bomber was shot down, the VPs are awarded to the intercepting player. If the bomber survives but has ditched their bombs, VPs are awarded to neither player unless victory points would otherwise be tied. So still something you got to keep track of. And then the player with the greatest total number of victory points at the end of turn 6 is the winner. If both sides' victory points are equal, then the intercepting player claims a minor victory if any surviving bomber has ditched the bombs. So lots of stuff going on there. And they give you some potential forces here to try this out with too, which is really neat, of Warlord there, just to give you guys an idea of how you could set that up and kind of recreating something that actually happened here. So definitely worth looking into. Lots of great little bits here throughout the book on that. But another fun mission that is somewhat similar to the previous two, in the sense that you're like escorting or intercepting bombers. But that was certainly part of aerial combat in World War II. Not just nothing but dogfights or anything like that. Again, this makes for a really fun scenario, whether it's Allies versus Germans or any other thing that you want to set up. It could really lead to some interesting scenarios. I think the main thing really just holding any of these back right now is just the lack of the bigger planes with like actual models. I think most people would want that. But that being said, for the time being, you'll have to create some templates or work on something there. And there's certainly a lot going on online where you can find if you're into the whole 3D printing thing, I think there's plenty of files out there with planes to scale if you do have that route to go, or certainly I think there's a fair bit of other templates and stuff that have been created for people there to get that to work. And certainly even just copying some of the things from the basic set with those cardboard bombers, I think you could probably make some reasonably sized ones if you do want to try some of the bigger engine bombers. But nonetheless, it's still a fun scenario. And if nothing else, going the single engine bomber route or even twin one with multiple things on the board is still a fun way to go. So just again, another great scenario from Warlord here as part of Blood Red Skies. So this is again high altitude intercept. Let us know in the comments, guys, what your experience has been with that. Whether you played it mainly as the intercepting player or the escorting player, or what forces were involved, time of the war, all that fun stuff. Definitely worth hearing. Leave us a like and subscribe if you haven't already, guys. And then if you do want to support the channel as well, check out the link in the description there. If you guys head over to Warlord from that, anything else that you pick up there, then also helps support the channel a little bit. So I appreciate anybody who does decide to take a peek over and do that. And then in the meantime, stay tuned. We will be working our way through the book here, getting through all the scenarios for you guys, and then working on some how to play videos and some more battle reports for you guys as well. So thanks so much. We'll see you in the next one.